Ακολουθεί η κυρία Στεφανία Van Lieshout. Είναι επιχειρηματίας, σπούδασε οικονοµικά και εργάστηκε ως οικονομολόγος στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο. Έχει ταξιδέψει σε περισσότερες από 60 χώρες και σας ζηλεύουμε πάρα πολύ γι' αυτό. Να πω την αλήθεια, θα μας μιλήσει σήμερα για το θέμα που έχει τίτλο «Ποιο είναι το μυστικό των εμπειριών ελαιοτουρισμού στη μεγαλύτερη ζήτηση που υπάρχει στον κόσμο».
Good morning. My name is Stefania van Lieshout. I'm a travel writer, and I'm been invited to talk about olive oil tourism. To be honest, I don't know much about olive oil, but I do know a lot about tourism. I've been writing about tourism since 2010, so 12 years now. And as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from the Netherlands. I'm Dutch. So I grew up in a culture where we cook and bake with butter rather than olive oil, which is important because many people from Western, Northern, Eastern Europe don't know much about olive oil. It's quite new, and especially not about olive oil tourism. When I said to friends and family that I was going to talk about olive oil tourism, they said, "Olive oil tourism? What is it? Is it just buying olive oil?" They didn't have a clue what it was. So I think that is important to keep in mind when you want to target that audience. Now, even though I'm Dutch, I'm from the Netherlands, I say I have olive oil in my blood because my mother is from Italy. And I spend a lot of time in Italy, and of course, olive oil is very important in Italy. And what I learned there is that in every village, my mother is from the Lake of Garda, but in every village, whether you're from the Lake of Garda or from Sicily, everybody will tell you that they have the best olive oil in the world. Now, according to my mother, that's impossible because the best olive oil only comes from the Lake of Garda. But Crete in Greece has the second best, according to her. So now you know. Anyway, I'm going to tell about best-selling olive oil tourism from a point of view, from a Western European point of view. Just a little bit more about myself. You can find me on the internet, social media. I've listed here where you can find me. I've written 26 blogs about mentioning olive oil, and I've co-authored and published a cookbook, which is now in the second edition, and now is my third time in Greece. Now, the main topic of today, how can you attract olive tourists to a destination? What I want to do is to look at the most important factors which are important in hospitality in olive tourism. And I summarize these under the 4 A's, which are accommodation, accessibility, attractions, and amenities. And I will go into detail about this much later. If you do these things right, you will turn your customers in olive brand ambassadors. And I think this is one of my colleagues also talked about this morning. We are repeating a bit, but in different words, so maybe the message is clear. So if you do this right, you will get best-selling olive oil tourism experiences. But first, I will give some examples of what olive oil tourism can be. So these are 7. I've listed them, and I will talk about it in detail in a moment. So olive oil tasting, we talked about that before. Olive oil growth and factory, olive mill tours, olive oil picking, adopting an olive tree, very important one, cooking classes with olive oil, a food tour, and workshop with beauty products. These are just examples. I'm sure there are more. Right, now the olive oil tasting, for me, it's a very good example how it works. Because what happened a couple of years ago, a friend of mine told me she went to an olive oil tasting. And I said, what's that, olive oil tasting? I had heard about wine tasting, cigar tasting, beer tasting, food tasting, but olive oil tasting was completely new to me. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I want to find out a bit more about that. So I asked around, and I've asked a couple of friends of mine. We went to this restaurant, and we had this olive oil tasting where the guy in this restaurant told about olive oil, about production, characteristics, how you pair it with wine and food, and of course we tasted different olive oils. He combined it with bread, with cheese, with meat, with with water. And afterwards, we stayed. We thought, very interesting, we stayed. We had a meal at the restaurant, and we had some wine, and of course, we bought some bottles of olive oil. So we went for an experience which was about 35 euros per person, and we ended up spending more than 100 euros per person. So what the key message is here, an add-on, you can always add on to your experience. You have an olive oil experience, but you add something extra on to sell more. Of course, you have to do it right. Another example of olive oil tourism is Olive Grove and Olive Mill Tour. This olive oil producers can do this, and you need to have a guided tour around the olive groves and or the production plant. What's important here is you talk about history. You have somebody, if you target the foreign market, the international market, of course you need to have somebody who speaks English, who can talk with knowledge about the production method, the uses of olive oil, the characteristics. And again, depending on what you include, and I'll talk about that later, you can ask a price of 35 to more than 100 euros. And again, your olive oil tour doesn't have to stop there. You can add on things. You can add tasting of the olive oil. You can combine this with wine. You can have what people from Western Europe love is have a dinner or a lunch outside because we don't have that nice weather usually. So in the olive grove, have a nice lunch, get a caterer in if you can't do it yourself. And of course you want to sell some wine and olive oil. And again, you can spend 35 euros, you can spend more than 100 euros depending on all the add-ons that you offer. This is an example, olive picking experiences. This is an example, a real example of a bed and breakfast in Spain. They rent out their rooms, which are 75 euros per night. And in the low season, they actually also have an olive oil grove. So they invite people to come olive oil picking. And people actually pay for the privilege of picking your olives. They double the price. Of course, it's not just olive picking. They will come in the morning, they will get some explanation, again, talk about history, production method, etc. And then in the afternoon, you have to add something on because people just, if there's nothing else, just olive picking might not do it. But they are in nature, so what they do, they add on walking trips, climbing, horse riding, all in nature, have lunch outside, have a nice picnic in the mountains, and the people get a bottle of olive oil at the end of it. Now, the customers pay a premium. On top of your accommodation, they pay a premium to do the olive picking and to do the excursions. On top of that, they have another add-on. The same bed and breakfast, say you can adopt an olive tree. Now, what is this? The customer, the tourist, pays 75 euros and they get a nameplate on their tree. It's not their tree, it's one of the trees. They get an email update twice a year. How is the tree doing? Is it doing great? Are we expecting lots of olives this year? And they will get an olive oil, two bottles of olive oil delivered to their home. And of course, they get a discount on room and packages for the future if they want to come back. So I think that's a good business model. Cooking classes. As I said before, in Western or in Eastern Europe, we're not used to cooking with olive oil. We cook with butter and bake with butter. So for instance, in Spain, you have the tortas de aceite, olive oil biscuits, which are lovely, something that we don't know. In Greece, of course, you do a lot of imam bayildi. I love the dish here, the anchovies with the olive oil, stuffed wine leaves, etc. These are all things that we don't know and not know anyhow how to cook. So if you want to do a cooking class, it's very good to have some oil education. What do you need? What kind of olive oil? How do you use them? Which kind of food do you pair them? And of course, you combine it with wine from the area, and then you can add on again. You don't need to keep it to the cooking class. You can add on selling olive oil, selling wine, selling local products, honey, cheese, and other local products. Food tours. In Malaga, where I lived for 10 years, it's very popular. You do a tour in the city. and you go to several restaurants, you start at the market, look at what there is to offer, explain something about the olives, the culture, and then you go to different restaurants. And in Spain, we call them tapas. It's like a small little dish. And you go to different restaurants, you pair it with wine, and of course, tell a bit about the city, about the history, and the relationship with olive oil. Again, depending on how you do it, how much time you spend, what you include, you can have 50 to 100 euros for this. And afterwards, if you want, you can sell some of the products that you've sampled. The workshop, beauty products, which I love. In Italy, and I think in Greece as well, you have a lot of beauty products which are made with olive oil. Again, something that we don't know much in Western Europe, especially not in the Netherlands. I haven't come across them. But shampoo, soap, facial and body cream made with olive oil, and to have a workshop about how you can make them, and especially if you emphasize the organic side of it, because people nowadays are very worried about the environment. So how you can produce good products, beautiful products, and be environmentally friendly at the same time. And of course, afterwards you can sell ingredients and the recipes and the tools, so you can make the experience a wider experience. Now, you have all these tourist attractions. But what is important, I mean, you can have this product, but you still have to make sure that your customer likes it. So what is important? As I said before, accessibility. If you have olive grove somewhere on top of a mountain and a deep, steep canyon on a dirt road, not many tourists from the Netherlands will want to come to you because they're not used to driving in mountains. So you have to think about, where are you? Is it good? Is it placed so that people can reach me? Is there public transport? If there's no public transport, and it is a bit difficult, can you provide transport instead? So accessibility is very important. And language I also put under accessibility. If you want to attract foreign tourists, you will have to at least use English. I mean, if you advertise in Greek, you will get Greek customers and no one else. I think other languages are probably not that important, but English is very important. And again, you have to think about accommodation. If your attraction is somewhere far away from everywhere, can you add something? Can you include accommodation, like the bed and breakfast? So you have the olive picking and you have a room at the same time. So think about, can I combine these things? And if I don't have accommodation, is there a hotel or a bed and breakfast in the neighborhood where I can partner with? Can I work together and offer a joint package? And then again, of course, as I said, olive oil tourism is quite niche for the Western European market. And maybe not a whole family is interested in it, but just one person of the family. So if you want to attract a family to your destination, you might want to make sure there are different attractions there. It's not just olive oil, but maybe there's a beach, or maybe there's a pool, and if that's not the case, maybe you are in the middle of nature and you do like the bed and breakfast. You offer walking trips in the nature, in the mountains, or hiking, or climbing, or horse riding. So think about a package, just not think about just the olive oil experience, because in many cases that will not be enough if there's nothing else attracting customers. So what else can you offer? What facilities? Do you have a swimming pool? Do you have a shop? Can you arrange airport transfer? Think about what else can you offer to the customer. So now you have this experience, and you have thought about all the side things, but now you have to get people to come to you. And nowadays people have a very short attention span. So you want to make sure that you grab their attention quickly. And you do that with visuals, images, posters, which are attractive. So make sure that next to your entrance you have a nice big sign which clearly says who you are and what you do. Have graphics, have brochures up in hotels nearby, in the tourist office, maybe in restaurants. Make sure that people see that there is something. On social media, make sure you make use of Facebook, Instagram, have nice pictures that tell a story. And then people might think, oh, that's interesting, but they still don't know much about it. So people are aware now that this exists, this attraction, but they still have to consider it. So the next step is people will start researching it in a small way. So what do? They Google on internet, and if you invite somebody like me, a travel writer, maybe somebody has written about that experience and they can find out what it is. Or you invite a YouTuber, somebody comes and put a video on YouTube about your experience. Have newsletters. You can send newsletters to your customers, to your neighbors, to your suppliers, to your employees, and explain what you do. And of course, you have some leaflets laying around in hotels and tourist offices and restaurants in your local area. And then when people are considering this, they still have to convert to being a customer. So, because you might not be the only one who is offering this experience, and you want to make sure that the customer chooses you. So have testimonials on your website, on Google Maps, on Facebook, where people can leave a review of your experience. And have a price guide. Make sure that people know what's included in the price. Your price doesn't need to be high or low, it needs to be right. And people need to know what's included. And very important in my view is you have to work together. Because coming back, olive oil tourism is a niche. So work with people who have the marketing power, because most olive oil companies will not be huge multinationals. So you will not have that much international marketing power. So you want to work together with platforms that do have this, that do have engineers who do nothing else than making sure your search engine optimization is done correctly, and that you end up high in Google and people search for information. So work together with platforms like TripAdvisor, Get Your Guide, Tickets, and work together with tour operators. Get your experience included in their packages that they offer. When people then start planning their holiday and they're looking, for instance, for Lesbos, they will go to TripAdvisor, say, what can I do in Lesbos? And then your experiences come up, like do an olive tour of an olive factory. People can find you there, and this is very much important in the planning stage. Of course, there is a cost to it, because if you include this on a platform, you will have to pay for that. You will have to pay a fee for that, so that will come from your profit. You also want to work together with local partners, because you have a shared interest. You all want to make sure that the tourist has a good experience. So you work together with tourist offices, you work together with restaurants, hotels, and make sure you make use of the local knowledge. You will profit from it together, if you have a network that works together. And again, make sure that they know that you exist, and also you help them, and you work together, you offer together a package, which makes it more attractive often for customers. Of course, there's a cost again to it, but I think it's worthwhile. So what do you do now to turn these customers into brand ambassadors? And I like to talk about the snowball effect. I mentioned the olive oil tasting before. I never heard about it. A friend mentioned it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I will go there. I invited some friends, so from 1 to 4 people. And then I wrote a blog about it on my travel blog, and that was read about 1,000 times. Now, one of those people who read that blog was a journalist from a Dutch national newspaper, the Volkskrant, which is a very big newspaper in the Netherlands, a small country. It has about 200,000 subscribers. So this journalist wrote about the experience that I had. He wrote about it in the newspaper, and then it reached 200,000 subscribers. Now, so from one person, my friend, to more than 200,000 people in a couple of months. And again, this is, it was a bit of a coincidence, of course. If this journalist hadn't read my blog, he would have not written about it. But still, you want to make sure that you put everything in place so people can, so this can happen. You cannot always make sure it happens, but you can put everything in place to make sure it happens. So be present on social media. As my colleague said before, be present and make sure that you're taggable, and especially Facebook and Instagram. And if people react and people tag your experience, do react, because the Facebook and Instagram and all the social media algorithms work in a way that when there's a lot of reaction, they will show it to more people. So when people say something about you, make sure that you comment, oh, thank you that you were there. Oh, lovely to see you. And I hope you come back next year. And even if people say something negative, don't delete the comment, but reply in a mature way. Say, I'm sorry that you had a bad experience. We'll do better next time. Can we offer you an experience for free next year? So people can see that you're trustworthy, that you're reliable, and that you react to customers that are not happy. And make sure that people can do a review, as I said before, on Google Maps, on Facebook page, on your website, on TripAdvisor, etc. This is just an example of the Get Your Guide with the booking platform that I mentioned. I asked them for numbers, and they said these were the top 12 best-selling experiences. Now, what you can see, for instance, in the first one is sold for 95 euros, but the third one is 26 euros. So price here is not the driving factor. It's about what's included in price. You can have a beautiful experience for 26 euros, which is 1 hour, and maybe a half day for 95 euros. But you have to make sure that people know what's included and that the price is right for the experience. So in summary, if you do this right, you work with partners, international partners, local partners, and make the experience worthwhile. So there is accommodation available. If you can't provide it, maybe somebody else can. There are amenities. It is accessible. There are other attractions. It's worthwhile for the customer. And with that, you can turn your customers into brand ambassadors, thus creating best-selling experiences. Thank you.